Some of you have enjoyed that breakfast a little too much and have started to nod off a little bit, so let's try that again. Good morning. Good morning. On the night before Dr. King was assassinated, he moved into the hotel because he wasn't feeling well. The individuals who were organizing the event were nervous because people had come to see Dr. King. But the movement had to move forward, and they began to assemble in the Masons Lodge. And those of Andrew Young and individuals who are an integral part of the movement began to lay the program out, and it started. But a sister came up to Andrew Young and simply said, "Where's Dr. King?" And with an agitated atmosphere, they sent for him. He got up out of bed and came to where they were. And with no notes and no preparation, he gave one of the most greatest and iconic speeches ever heard. People often ask afterwards, when he was talking, how was he able to speak in such a manner? He said, you arrive in life with the extension of your faith where you let go and you let God.
Yes, Jesus.
So whenever you see me speaking anywhere, you're looking at the physical structure of Darren Freedom Green, but you're getting a word from God.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah.
There's no tablet here, there's no regurgitated notes.
Right.
This information is coming from the soul. We're at a predicament and time and moment where it is important for us to begin to give thought to where we are.
Yeah.
This church is an integral part of the movement.
Yes, sir.
And I want to salute and thank the amazing shepherd of this house, Pastor Jordan. We'll give a round of applause to him. And people ask me all the time, what is it about Pastor Jordan that drew you to him? Because you act like you're ready to fight over him when you hear something. But he's not flying all over the place trying to speak at big mega churches.
I know that's
He's
right.
not looking to be on billboards and be worshipped. But he's simply a shepherd who's paying attention to the sheep. That's the work.
Yeah.
And that is what drew me to him. And for anybody listening to the sound of my voice, just know when you come for him, you're coming for me also. I want to salute and thank my little brother Larry, who is doing amazing work with what he's doing over here. And I get calls and people inbox me and ask me, is Larry infatuated with death? Is there something going on we need to talk about? No, he is our reconnection to our humanity. If you were to go over there and look at that board and how he's laid it out, you would not be able to not say, oh, wait a minute, and that's such and such is, and I grew up with, and you're identifying with people who the paper put out there as statistics. But see, Larry, through the work and the manifestation of the gift and assignment he's been given, so you're not going to understand it. He's making the humanistic component of those lives lost be personal to us again. And we need that. In a city where violence permeates our community on a daily basis, sometimes we look at caution tape and keep it moving. When we need to take a moment and acknowledge that's somebody's family. That's our brother and sister. And if we don't have people like Larry doing what he's doing, then we begin to become hard pieces of steel. And then we wonder why we kill. Let's give that brother another round of applause. Many, many centuries ago, Pastor Jordan, a man by the name of John, found himself on an island incarcerated in Patmos. Some call it Pelon. And even while confined here in prison for doing God's work, John still had the freedom and independent mind to look towards heaven. And in doing so, he saw a new heaven and a new earth. My assignment today is to talk about stopping the violence. But as Pastor Jordan would say, I'm going to hashtag that thing and call it a new heaven and a new earth.
Yes, sir.
What is needed now for the city of Trenton to move forward? We're locked in, as John was, not by a 6x9 cell, but confined mindsets. But we keep doing the same things over and over and over again, but still look for transformation and change. Can't happen in that kind of formula. So the trajectory of our thinking has to change now. When you begin to look at where we are and you begin to assassinate the character of those killing in the streets, you ought to ask yourself, where did those black, brown, and yellow children learn to kill? Certainly wasn't across the globe and across the universe in which we travel. There are 196,940,000 square miles on the physical planet. And when you study black history, you never find us killing ourselves. So where did that germ come from? Where did we learn to hate ourselves? If we're going to stop the violence, we have to speak to the origin of it. And nobody has ever addressed the reality of black and brown people being enslaved. That is where we learn to hate our own selves. Over a 400-year process of seeing our women be demoralized, of seeing our children being raped and taken away, of seeing our men become bucks and animals, and you wonder why you're now operating as savages. The Jews lost 6 million in the Holocaust. And they were given resources and millions of dollars to rebuild their communities. Black people were told to get up, get on, and get over it. And in the Middle Passage alone, we lost 94 million. So if they were given money to allocate for 6 million, what is owed to us? See, I'm tired of people being quiet, and it's my season now, so I'm going to speak. And I'm going to put this fire in the atmosphere, because if we don't, generations are being lost. And what must we do now to look at how our mindsets have become devalued? Well, look now at how we're birthed now. The children in schools now are birthed into concentrated poverty. How can you stop the violence when children being birthed into communities are living in survival mode? That's part of why they operate in the way that they do. That's why there's so much intense hate and animosity and a tangible fear of being taken out. Then you begin to move outside of the houses they're birthed into, and the communities are dilapidated. If you're living on Stuyvesant, or if you move to North Trenton on MLK, or if you go to South Trenton on Center Street, or if you come to right out East Trenton around the corner on Walnut, if there are 50 houses, 25 of them are what? Abandoned. And what happens when children come out and walk and come back into communities that look like funerals? When you walk psychologically and you look at the worst and you look at death and you look at degradation, you begin to think that you're not worth life. So at some point in time, we've got to begin to address the hollow shells that they come out of, because really the abandoned properties are parallel to Trenton, a once vibrant city. A once place that had light and hope. A once place that had life. But now you've conditioned yourself to a condition. And we've got to be able to go in there and reject all of what's going on. As the Bible says, make all things anew. But then they leave their communities and they move into school systems where all the buildings are over 100 years old. There are 27 schools here in the city of Trenton that have higher lead scores than Flint. And you keep wondering why these babies can't sit still. Examine the data when you get on your phone later on today and look at Google and see what happens to lead poison. The mental capacity moves to a place where you're now looking like autistic children. And then 1 in 3 who have had lead poison are now dealing with the reality in some capacity of the judicial system. And this is what's causing our children to erode. Now, we're celebrating that a new high school is being built now, but for over 30 years, we sent them into a condemned building.
Say that.
News report after news report, press conference after press conference, saying asbestos, mold, rats, mildew. But we sent our babies into the worst and asked them to be their best. How does that work in an equation where you keep showing me I'm nothing, but you keep telling me I can be anything? At some point in time, if you want to stop the violence, you have to go to the root of what's causing it. And then when we begin to move into our communities, there are 5 libraries, Pastor Jordan. 4 of them are closed. What message are we sending when we have literacy teams and we have all kind of fundamental building blocks for reading, but the place where they're supposed to be reading, researching, learning, and growing, Uncle John, is closed? Question so you can begin to get some balance on what I'm talking about. Are the libraries closed in Princeton?
No.
Are they closed in Hamilton?
No.
How about Ewing?
No.
How about Lawrence? Then please tell me what's going on in Trenton that we've made it okay for the libraries to be closed here. And the pain in my soul is that we've closed our minds to ever opening them again. You're telling children that they can be everything, but you're showing them that they're nothing. And the last but not least, as we begin to move through it, last night, my little brother called me and told me there were shots on Hewitt Street. The night before, 2 young men got into a verbal exchange about a parking spot. And shots were rang, and bodies were hit. Willfully, nobody died. A month ago, there was a woman whose body was found in a garbage bag. And nobody said a thing, Miss Caldwell. Nobody acknowledged the death that's going on. Last year, we buried a 15-year-old, Siani Kirkman. I roll over at night sometime and cry about being at that funeral, seeing that young child in that box. There's something wrong in our community when we allow our children to be murdered and no one says a word. Somebody's got to be saying, what's going on? What's happening? And no, you don't have to have all the answers, but you do have to have all the courage to acknowledge that there's a problem. And whenever you sit around and keep letting people tell you they're leaders, then you're listening to the wrong song in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I came today with the right message, and you're going to get this work today. Yeah, it's important that we begin to take this thing on headstrong. If I can have about 8 more minutes, I'm going to lay out the blueprint on how we're going to go from hell to heaven. Can I have about 8 more minutes? First and foremost, if you want to do anything, this church moves because you have a great leader.
Yes.
You have to have true leadership. The book of Romans says it very simply. How can they know unless he be a preacher? How can he preach unless he's been sent? We've been given some horrible leaders. I'm not going to name names because that makes stuff personal. I want you to get your mind fixated on the work. What do leaders need to be doing? Leaders need to be identifying issues and moving from start to finish. And in the process of doing that, you build better leaders. This is my nephew Tion over here. I don't teach him to be good. I teach him to be great. And the thing that I teach him when I'm done talking is, son, you're better than me. See, it takes some humility to build great leaders when you can say, I want the people underneath my purview to be better than me. You didn't see Dr. King walking around with his chest up. You didn't see Malcolm moving in that manner. Even Medgar Evers was always a humble spirit.
Yes, sir.
But we've gotten to a place now where it's a race for who can have the biggest ego. People are now fixated with posting pictures on social media. My question is, what are you doing? People always ask me, Free, why don't you take pictures when you're doing the work? I say, what are you looking at? I'm looking at the work. Then that's all you need to see. You know what I look like. Stay focused on the work. Because if you're not careful, you can put a stranglehold on yourself and your ego will erode you. It is so important. And after we begin to deal with real leaders who are moving us forward, the second thing we must do is begin to heal as a community. The big poster board now across this country is opioid abuse. And the governor who left, and we can all wave to him, just go, allocated $200 million to the opioid abuse. My question to legislators now, and we need to be on the governor's heels, this new governor that we played a part in electing. What are you going to do to address the era of crack babies that destroys our families and our communities? Not just from a psychological perspective, but I'm talking to you about the priorities, these policies that destroy our community now. Some of the babies we teach in schools now can't sit still because of what's in their system. And if you notice, and I was talking to Pastor about it over here, whenever you see those on opioids, they are always in rehabs. They're always at home. They are always somewhere making them look like what they are, which is victims. When you saw us in the crack era, we were prostitutes, we were criminals, we were people, and you looked at the television and began to say, somebody need to kill them people right there. Wait a minute, that's us you're talking about. So if we're looking like criminals, then it makes you comfortable with locking us away. And most of the black, brown, and yellow men, women, and children now are suffering from incarceration. And even when they come home, their background issues are keeping them confined to the lives of the community, and there's a struggle there. So we've got to address our healing. Again, I talked earlier about what was given to the Jewish community. So what should be given to the black, brown, and yellow communities after being under siege for 30 years? How do we begin to heal ourselves? How do we begin to rebuild our communities? This is what's needed now. And we don't need to have any more prayer vigils. I'm not knocking prayer. We don't need to march nowhere. We need resources in our community to address our issues. Next, we have to begin to build qualitative housing in our community. Why is that so important? Because when you have nice things, you feel differently. One of the biggest problems with the babies I teach inside of the schools is not that they aren't brilliant, but their self-esteem is destroyed when I meet them. You talk to them and their eyes immediately go to the floor. They don't want to have eye contact because they've been taught to be ashamed of themselves. It's because of where they come from, what they've seen. We need qualitative housing so you can feel good about the community you come from. You can have 3 garbage cans sitting out in front of this church, and what will people still do? Because they don't feel good about themselves. But the second component is the economic piece. When you are a homeowner, you think differently. We have to move in this town from being renters to being owners. See, when you're an owner, you know if you don't do it, it won't get done. If you don't fix it, it won't get fixed. And then you don't say things like, let the landlord take care of that, or somebody else's responsibility. No, when you own the good, you own the bad, you own the great, because it's all a part of your responsibility. And until we start providing that in this community, they're going to keep jacking the taxes because you don't have an economic base. I'm laying a platform for something else, but we'll talk about that later. But right now, we're talking about building qualitative housing programs. Next, which is so critical, is we have to renovate our schools. We send our babies into schools and they look at books and they don't see themselves in there. See, we have to begin to have curriculum, Ms. Caldwell, talk to them a little bit about the Amistad. We have to begin to let our babies look at information that looks like them. See, not too many of them know about the greatness of their ancestors. We bring in Black History Month, give them a half a serving of Dr. King, a small side order of Rosa Parks, and somebody else who they might feel good about. But in other communities, they know about themselves, they know from whence they've come, and they end themselves living the legacy of the greatness that brought them there. James Baldwin said, when you know from whence you come, there's no telling to where you can go. And our babies don't know, so they don't get up and speak eloquently like James Baldwin. They don't write like Zoe Neal Hairston. They don't desire to move people like Dr. King. They don't know about Sojourner Truth, and they don't know about Ida B. Wells and keeping things in place. They don't know about Septima Clark, who was organizing behind the scenes when Dr. King was on the front line. They don't know about these great architects of history. It was Daisy Bates, who was the president of the NAACP, who moved the Little Rock Nine to saying, it's now or never. And see, when you know stuff like that, you move differently. So important that they know about W.E.B. Du Bois. So when somebody says you can't go to an Ivy school, they can say, yes, I can. Somebody before me did it. I can do it now. See, we keep talking about Clarence Thomas and cursing him out. But there was a Supreme Court justice before him. Sometimes you ought to talk about things like that. And see, if you talk about things like that, maybe they'll get thought to being the next one. We're always hoping somebody else does it. When do we get in line to do it? We have to change the educational system. Next, and this is a critical area, please hear me well, we have to change the mentality of economics in the city. What do you mean, Free? There's been a ballpark built here. There's an arena built here. The hotel, North 25. Donnelly Homes had 2 twin towers. All of that work was done by people who don't live here. I'm going to let that marinate for a minute. Right now, Trent Central High School, hear me well, is a $150 million project. Ask Brother Tracy Sofex, my big brother, is he working on that project? Right now, they're rebuilding the old courthouse. But they built a new courthouse.
Yes.
Ask him, was he on that project? So if you keep having millions come to the city, and nobody living here is working on these projects, the millions come in, but then they leave with the people leaving out. See, imagine if you're taking local contractors and allowing them to do the work, and then saying to 4 to 5 of these young brothers, we're going to intern you with this construction crew here. Now they're carrying shovels and they're putting down the guns. You asked me to talk about stopping the violence. You asked me to do. It's not that hard when you know what you're doing. But so many times in this place, and again, I'm not going to name names, people are put into major positions based on nepotism. And then when it comes to fourth quarter, they always want to drop back and punt. No, it's time to get this first down. But if you're not built like that, then you can't do that. And that's part of our problem as we begin to look at what's going on. We need to begin to construct new leadership around the issues that are pertinent to our community. Last but not least, we have to begin to understand all we have is ourselves. Sometimes we look around and I say to people, part of what took me away from the church for a moment was I saw how church folk treated church folk. You come inside and you're looking for love and you can't sit there, baby. You come inside and you look to hug and they tell you, you got to sit over there. Or you're not here. And now look in this room, and I'm not knocking anyone, but who's not here with us? The young people who are a part of the violence we're trying to stop. I'm saying to you as a young person, you've got to be more receptive to them. Second piece is you have to let them lead. Let them lead the choir. Let them lead the song. Let them lead the ministry. Because if you constantly are taking them where they need to go, they never learn how to do it themselves. Young people have to feel like this is their reality. This is their thing. And if we begin to lay the groundwork on reconstructing leaders, it has to start with our families. It has to start at home. This is my uniform. I put it on. You won't see me, as most young black and brown men, struggling with wearing their pants off their behinds. I never did it because the champion never did it. He worked for 40 years in social services for the city. I worked to try to change the morality of the city. He was the chairman of the deacon board for Shiloh Baptist Church for 40 years. I strive to be a chairman of morality in my community. The greatest black man to ever exist for me is my father. Yes, sir. Whenever you're talking about stopping the violence, you have to begin to have black and brown men on the front lines. Teaching these young men how to be men. It's not something you can email in. You can't Facebook this. You can't tweet it. No, you've got to put your hands on it. My father, I'm 48 years old, he says something one time. And when he's done saying it, I say, yes, sir. And that's the establishment of a rule and a law that allows me to govern myself accordingly. Too many young black men are trying to learn manhood from the streets. And the institution of the streets, the language is profanity, the culture is disrespect, and the comfort level is death. We've got to get back into our women. You must begin to stop arguing and nitpicking with each other and get back to teaching these young queens how to be queens. How many times have you rolled past a young lady and talked about her, but did not talk to her? So many times they have so much pain in them, and because we don't know what it is, we love to judge and critique, but we fail to take time to teach. I'm telling you, but for grace, I wouldn't be where I am, because older brothers and sisters in my community, even though I have an amazing mother and father, they taught me. They put their hands on me. They shaped me. We allow young people to stand outside at 10 o'clock in the morning and don't say anything to them. The question immediately should be, why aren't you in school? But we ride by, I just don't want to. Well, what you're saying is you don't want to deal with the problem in our community. And if you don't want to deal with the problem, you are part of the problem. And we have to begin to address it. I say it all the time. How can you fear what you're responsible for teaching? last but not least, we are birthed into an amazing moment.
Yes, sir.
It's an opportunity for us to do all that we were birthed to do. But we've got to start seeing ourselves as being biblical. And let me give it to you before I sit down. In the book of Acts, John and Peter were traveling, and they ran into a man who was birthed lame.
Yes, sir.
Meaning from the moment he was brought forth into universe, he had an inability to move. Some people inside of impoverished communities are like that. They're birthed lame. They don't think to be champions. They don't think broad. They don't think global. They keep their minds on minor. Well, God is major, so I can be as well.
Yes, sir.
But they met this man and they said to him, silver and gold have I not, but they healed him by the word.
Right.
And he rose to his feet and stood. But the most important part of that parable is they didn't look down on the man when he was hurting. Didn't walk past him while he was down. Didn't disrespect him where he was at. But what did they say? 3 words. Look at us.
Yes, sir.
And I want you to let that be the theme when you leave out of the day. When you see that young girl that's walking, tapping her head and walking with her pajamas, don't condemn her. Say, look at us and take time and talk to her. When you see that young man who's running wild in the community and he has no structure, no stabilization, he has no culture, don't curse him out. Don't roll your window up. Say, look at us and take time and talk to him. When you see our community going the wrong direction and people talking about filming fights and acting crazy, take a moment not to curse, but walk and stop the cursing that's going on and say, look at us. It's our time to move forward now. It is our time to look at us collectively now. Look around this room. All we have is ourselves. And if we don't stand up now, if we don't move this thing forward now, they're going to look back 50 years from now and say, what is it that you did? Where were you when you stood up? I'm going to tell you now, I'm not making no announcement today, but I'm going to move this city forward. It's my time. It's my season. God bless you.